Hey, this is John from Alloy 211. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Boker Automat Kalashnikov 74 BET push button automatic side opening pocket knife. I purchased this knife about two and a half months ago from a local gun knife show for $40, which I thought was a reasonable price. Carried it for about a month and a half or so, and I thought, you know what, I'll do a video on how it held up, how to take it apart, hopefully how to put it back together, and all that good stuff. Now, when I contacted Boker to find out a little bit more about this, they said that they originally produced the Kalashnikov line under the Magnum moniker, the Boker Magnum line. And then in 2008, it switched to the Boker Plus line, that this particular knife had been made for a previous customer under the Boker Plus line, and that they do not make these in automatics from the factory. So this was converted by somebody else after the fact. After Boker had made it and sold it, it was converted to be an automatic. So now we got a little bit of the history out of the way. Let's look at the box. Looks like your, well, similarly patterned to your standard AK pattern magazine. It's a nice cardboard box. One end you have the barcode, the other end you have the model number. Inside you have a nice fitted foam. That's about it for the box. The knife itself, you have push button here on the left hand side. On the right hand side you have the pocket clip, axle nut. It says AS8 stainless, so I mean not great steel, but could be worse. There's definitely worse out there. Now on this side we have 3 frame screws and the axle screw. We're going to go ahead and start by taking the frame screws out. They are a T6. Now, full disclosure, these are loose. They should be tighter than what they are at the moment. Yeah, see, that one just turned. Now, one thing I do like about these screws is that they had Loctite on them, so that's always nice. You never want the frame of your knife to become loose. Now we're going to go ahead and take the axle screw out. That's a T8. Okay, now I want to make sure I hold the axle nut in place. If it slides out now, things will kind of fall apart. I'm going to go ahead and dump the little screws out onto the table, so that way I don't have to worry about losing those. Now when you go to take this apart, now I could have done this when it was together and this might have been a better idea, but well, I waited a little too long. If you go ahead and release the blade, get it to about here, and then hold it in place, pushing it down just slightly, or pulling it up, you'll hold the button in place when you take the side plate off. See? There we go. Now that way when you let this come back to open, you can have your finger, there goes the safety, you can have your finger on the lock button as you release it. That way you can let this out gently, kind of tip the blade up. There we go. And that way you won't shoot the coil spring that acts on the button out, because you don't want to do that. Now we've got that like that. Let's go ahead and zoom in just a tad. Get a better look at it. As you can see, you have a small hole in the blade here. That is for the coil spring that acts on the blade. I'm going to actually push the axle nut out. Make sure you hold the blade when you do this. It is still under spring pressure, because I find that to make it a little easier. Of course, not now, but there we go. And there we go. And there's our spring. That's the spring that actually acts on the blade. This portion goes into the frame. And then that, we can get it to focus. So it actually goes into the blade. There's the hole. And there's a indentation on the back side of the blade, right there for that. Now something else to notice is this little bit that's taken out of the blade up here. Now that, there we go. That's what allows you to get the button in place with the spring and everything. We'll kind of look at that here a little closer in a moment. Oop. There's your safety lock. Right there. As you can see, it's got a little notch. That side goes to the left. That's important to remember. And that's pretty much it. That's, oh, then you have your blade stop stud right there. Be nice if I didn't just keep putting it way out of frame. This frame is made out of what appears to be aluminum. Well, we have it apart and we just zoomed in. Let's look at this. It did wear a bit here. The finish wore off and it smoothed out. And on the blade, you can see some wearing there on the finish. But I think that maybe it's things that were jingling against it in my pockets, so it's kind of hard to say. Okay, now let's put it back together. First thing, I put this coil spring in place here. Now I'm going to take the axle nut and slide it in, and it does have a flat. It only goes in there one way. I'm going to slide it in to about there. Then I'm going to hold it with my finger. Then I'm going to go ahead and take the blade, get the spring in the hole, then I'm going to push it up, or push it towards top of the frame, and push, there we go, the axle nut in place. Now do not let this slide out after this point. If this slides out after this point, things can kind of fly apart. Now, in order to put the push button back in, I'll go ahead and start with the coil spring in the recess. Now I'm going to take the push button and just slightly tilt the blade so I can get that coned portion underneath the blade. Let's see, I'm kind of tilting it like that, and I'm going to tilt the blade up at the same time. And there we go. Now after I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and bring the blade, again, about to there, and push down. Again, make sure you hold that axle nut in place with the other finger on the other side, like that. Oh, there we go, like that. Okay, now hold it at about here. Put your lock in place. And by holding it here, it keeps the button depressed just enough that it's not going to go flying out. Okay, now take this side, and you'll probably have to wiggle the button just a little bit to get it to go in there. There we go. It clicks in, and now you can let the blade go so it's all the way locked open. Make sure you're, again, holding that nut into place. And then put your axle screw back in. There we go. Now you tighten this down. I don't ever tighten this too tight. We'll get into adjusting it in a minute, at least where I like to have it. Now I want to show, since we have, again, this zoomed in, you can see there's just a little bit of Loctite on the frame screws already, so that's nice. And they just go back into their homes, like so. This time, I'll tighten these up. Again, don't over tighten, but you do want them to be tight. There we go. And there we go. Okay. Now when I adjust my tension on my blade, I like it to be just tight enough that I don't feel a lot of wobble in it, and that it doesn't smack just extremely hard against the back of it. But I don't want to be able to feel it really drag on the blade. So this is actually about perfect right here. Might be nice if I zoomed out just a tad. But that's about perfect right there. So sometimes you get it on the first try. Now my overall thoughts on the knife, I actually liked it very much for a side opening pocket knife in the $40 range as an automatic. I thought that for that price and the quality of it, it's a pretty good knife. I sharpened it after I got it. It did come pretty sharp, but then I went ahead and sharpened it even sharper, and it did hold the edge pretty well with moderate use. I didn't use this heavily. I didn't use it as heavily as I use my everyday carry knife, but I did use it. I wanted to actually give it a fair chance. The only thing I can really say that I really dislike about the knife, I'm not a big fan of how thin the blade is. I'd like it if it were a little thicker, but you know, that's just the way that is. But the thing I really don't like about it is the lock. I found the lock is difficult at times to take off, and at least with one hand from the thumb like this, you know, you have to catch it with your nail. It really slows down the operation of the knife. And if you have an automatic opening knife, you don't really want it to be slow. So I didn't really care for that. I didn't have any problems with it opening in my pocket with it off, but that doesn't mean that you may not. So if you're carrying this in your pocket, you should probably have the lock on. And it does lock it in place. It's not going to open as long as that lock is on. But it can be kind of a pain, because see there, it seems like it's off. And if you push hard enough, it will open, but it's not actually off there. Well, it's probably, there we go. But you can push it to there, which is locked. Then you get it to halfway, or so, like there. It's still locked, but you can get it to a certain point where it seems like it'd be unlocked and it's just not quite unlocked. So other than that, I really, for $40 or less, I would actually recommend this for anybody that's looking for a knife like this. And if you just are looking to get into automatic knives and you see one of these for $40, then I would recommend buying it. It seems to hold up well, seems to be worth the money. Maybe in the long term it's not going to hold up so well, but I don't really see any reason why it wouldn't. I saw numerous places that actually sell replacement springs, so those really aren't that hard to come by. And overall, like I said, for the price point, I think it's a good knife. If you watch some of my other videos and you enjoy those, I'd really appreciate if you subscribed. If you like this video, I'd really appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. Thanks, and have a great day.